We're gonna call this meeting to order. We're gonna start the meeting by basically everybody going through the board and saying hello and who they are. And then we're gonna start with a presentation on solar panels. So Doug, if you'd like to start.
Hello, my name's Doug Thomas.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Sue Fury.
Hello, my name is Martha Smith.
Deb Paul.
Ron Dunn.
Amy Finnemore.
And Mike Speltz, Bob Petrie.
Okay, so this is the board. I want to take 2 seconds to welcome Amy. She is the chair of the Londonderry School Board, and she will be our liaison to this board for the school. And we also have, what's his name? Alan Miller, but he could not be here tonight to be involved with this. And I think this is amazing that the school is going to help look at this, and it will be a great money saver, I think. And it will show that the town and the school can work together to get something done that's positive in this town, which is so well needed at this moment in time. So now I'm all done talking. Gentlemen, if you'd like to start, state your name, where you're from, and we'll listen.
My name's Eric Faniff. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Aegis Renewable Energy.
Make sure you speak into the mic
can't
so
hear
that the video camera will capture it.
Eric Faniff. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Aegis Renewable Energy.
And I'm Tom Flynn. I'm the Chief Operations Officer and a professional engineer for Aegis Renewable Energy from Waitsfield, Vermont.
And we're going to give you a presentation on how municipalities can think about doing a solar project and sort of the steps of that and how we could help you. I'm going to hand out my presentation so you can follow along.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, behind Eric.
So first of all, who's Aegis? We are a renewable energy developer and EPC contractor based in Waitsfield, Vermont. We've been in business for about 10 years, have 20 megawatts of projects installed, which is a pretty good sum. We've worked with the federal government. We work with many municipalities and a lot of private clients as well. The projects we've built tend to be in the 100 kilowatt to 2.5, 3 megawatt size, which is considered small utility scale, large commercial. And we built projects in Massachusetts, out west in Utah. We're building one in New York, New Hampshire, and a lot of projects in Vermont. Question when a town is thinking about doing this, how do they, first of all, they have to get educated. Like, what does it mean? How do we do it? How do we play? If we just think as a town, we want to do this either for just the fact that the town wants to move in a direction of a state mandate to help the state meet its goals, or sometimes the town is actually seeking revenue, which is usually part of the equation. They usually either issue an RFP or they interview folks like us and they pick a horse and that's their consultant, because there's a lot of early stuff that has to happen before you get to the reality of being able to bid a project. And towns usually don't have the expertise, and they typically don't have the development capital to do that early stage work. And so it's always a question of how much do they take that on and how much do they just find somebody who's going to sort of do that as part of their business development budget. You mentioned, or Deb mentioned, that you had identified a landfill as a possible site. So site selection.
It's not a landfill, it's a Superfund site.
Okay.
It's on Auburn Road, and
Yeah.
it's pretty substantial in size. I don't know the exact, do you know, Mike?
Yeah, we've looked at it, actually. We drove out there and we've done a visual analysis, and I'll actually show you a site plan.
Actually have a site plan we can leave you with.
Yeah, that we sort of just did an initial analysis, which is what we do, right? So site selection is one of the earliest things you do. It's super important, not only for sizing, but you need to find power lines that you don't have to do a large extension for, and also the right size power lines for the kind of project that you want to do.
Just for the record, it was a landfill,
Yeah.
it is a capped landfill.
Yeah.
Right, and then it became a Superfund site as.
You know how big it is?
Exactly.
I think the capped part is about 22 acres, maybe, something like that.
Yeah, there's three different.
Parcels bigger.
Yeah, it's like a 200-acre site total, but the actual capped areas, I think, are about 12 and a half
12
acres
yeah.
total.
12 acres, yeah.
Yeah, there's three different sections. And we just completed in December the largest landfill project in the state of, to date anyway, in New Hampshire on the Manchester landfill. And we also, in December, completed a 500 kilowatt project in Vermont on the landfill. And we're in the process of developing and probably, hopefully, constructing this season a smaller landfill project in Vermont. And so we're pretty familiar with that process. None of the projects that we have built on thus far have been under an EPA Superfund jurisdiction, like the dairy project is that they're initiating right now. It just adds a layer of regulatory complexity to deal with, but it's not prohibitive. And the EPA is pretty supportive of these kinds of projects. And from what we've seen of your site, it's trending in the right direction, and there aren't any major red flags on the site, which is, bodes well for being able to do it. So there's just a couple of pictures in there, those three sites that I just talked about. My next slide. The things that happen early in a solar project are you apply to the utility, you select your site, and then you apply to the utility. And there's a really early process with the utility that doesn't cost a lot of money, and it's also not very definitive, but it starts to begin the discussion with the utility. And so you're trying to find out at a very high level, gross level, i.e. not super detailed, what's the capacity, what do they think you can build? So you begin to sort of see whether what you want to build is possible. And then you design your project, assuming that you think you can do what you want to do. And then you pay a fee. And with Eversource in New Hampshire, it's probably in the $20,000 to $35,000 range to do a system impact study. And that gives you some real information. And you start to get to have a pretty good idea of where you're going to go. Out of that could come really good news, and you know what you're going to be able to do. Or it could come, there needs to be system upgrades, and we need to do another study called a facility study. And so they're going to ask you for another $30,000 or $35,000. And go ahead.
What are these fees for now?
It's just you pay the utility. They're studying. Think of their engineers looking at things to see if what you want to do is possible on their system.
That's to the developer?
It's, yes, or whoever wants to do it. It could be a developer, it could be the town. We'll talk about how a town might do that, or how a town might just step aside and say, you developer, take care of all of this for me. And so the reason a town might want to do that is because the more certainty you can have in a project before you get a developer involved, the better they're going to be able to give you an offer that's most beneficial to you because you've de-risked the project. That's the terminology they use, de-risking. Because that early capital is risk capital. You don't know what the answer is going to be from that study. And it may be, we can't do anything. And so then you've written a $25,000 check and you come out of it with not much to show for it. So typically, most towns don't do that. Most towns, when they look at their risk profile and their need to maximize the benefit, they say, you know what, I'd rather take less risk and maybe not get quite as much benefit. And that's typically what happens. We've dealt with one town in Vermont. It's a small, it's not a small town, but they've done some smaller projects. We're on our third project with them. And they've just decided that they're comfortable with that process. And the good news is they've never got a no. And they've decided to own all of their projects, which is somewhat atypical, not completely atypical, but that's just the way they want to do it. They decided they didn't just want, a lease payment or a discount on their power. They wanted to own their projects. And they've just gone to bonds. It's not bonds. They've done it with, it's kind of like lease financing, essentially. So they don't have to have a bond vote. And it's been a good thing for them. My guess, they would never have done a project 2.5 megawatts, which is sort of maybe what I think your town could have an appetite for. That's just a lot more money involved with that, and that would be a much bigger deal for a town to take a bond for. Orders of magnitude of 6 times the size of what this town in Vermont did.
I have a question, if possible. Going back a little bit, you mentioned about some pre-work the towns should do to de-risk the project.
Yep.
And you mentioned fees involved.
Yep.
In your experience dealing with towns, who pays for those fees?
Sure.
Where do they come from?
Sure. So an energy committee would talk to folks like us, and they would make the decision that, you know what, we think it would be best for our town to try to take some of that risk capital on. So we're going to go to the select board of town, whatever. They're going to go to the town and say, this is what we think we should do, and this is the budget. And then they look for a vote to try to get the funding. That's what this town in Vermont has done. The town manager goes to the select board, and they've approved those funds to do that. So that's how you would do it.
At a much smaller scale, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
thank you.
He's been getting approved, $15,000 for these studies, whereas you would probably, you could stage it and probably, I would maybe seek approval in the $35,000 range, but you would need to prep them that, look, if it comes back that we need another study, it might be another $35,000. And it doesn't mean you couldn't stop at that point. You could then decide to bring a developer and say, you know what, we don't want to take any more risk on our side, so we want you to do it. And the good news is if you were to go forward with the project, you would get paid that money back from the developer. The developer's happy to pay those funds once they know they have a project. It's just who takes the risk up front, and whoever takes the risk looks for some benefit for having taken the risk. It's natural.
Thanks.
So then the question is, what's the program? A town, like, can we do solar? How does it work? And various states have various programs, and New Hampshire has its program, which thankfully last August changed to allow larger projects. It used to be a 1 megawatt cap, and now only for municipalities. It's not for just normal businesses or private projects. You can go up to 5 megawatts. So that's the good news, because larger projects have a better economy of scale, which benefits everybody. But you have to have a load. When I say load, just think of usage. You have to use at least as much as your project is projected to produce. That's sort of the limitation in the New Hampshire program. And so I looked at what Deb sent me for all the different accounts in Eversource. And it looks like you're using roughly, 1,600,000, 1,650,000 kilowatt hours a year. That is probably a 1 megawatt project.
But we haven't gotten the
the
information
schools.
yet for the schools.
Perfect, yeah.
And so I would assume it's another quarter on top of what,
Yeah.
and doubled what we do.
I would agree. Driving by the schools, I was ballparking it, and I would say that it's probably another, if what you have right now is a 1.1 megawatt system, I'm guessing you might even get to a 2 megawatt or a 1.5 megawatt system. And the reason that would be important is because if you were to target the site that we've talked about, there's only a single phase line down, is it Auburn Road?
Auburn Road.
Auburn Road. And so it looks like about a 1.2 mile line upgrade, which is, again, roughly speaking, $800,000 to $1 million, which is an expensive interconnection element for a project that size. But a 2 megawatt project, a 2.5 megawatt project, maybe. Like you're on the bubble of like, you got to really look at it, and that might be feasible. But a 1 megawatt project wouldn't be able to shoulder that burden. The other thing to do, and we do this, with this town in Vermont, we looked at 15 different sites. Every piece of land they owned, the town owned. And we just looked at all of them to try to figure out what was the best property given the alternative potential uses and this potential use, and to see what made the most amount of sense. And if you have I know the town owns a bunch of land. I don't know if any of it is near, 3-phase lines, if it's suitable, but we'd be happy to, if you had 4 or 5 of them that you thought was, potentially in the cards, we could analyze those sites for you. Then the question is, okay, how do you get paid, or how does this work, right? In a site in New Hampshire, the best place to put a solar project is on a site where there's usage. So if you had a water treatment plant and there was acreage there, that's where we would put it, because the energy that actually would directly offset, and I don't mean in real time, would be used as it's produced on site, that gets the highest rate per kilowatt hour. But I don't think you have any big user facilities, frankly, or secondarily, big user facility.
Well, not yet.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good to know. So we should talk about that. So that's the highest and best place. Secondarily, which is like what we're doing in Manchester and what Derry's doing, you just put up a project where there is no usage, and it's called the default energy rate. In an Eversource, currently, it's interesting. It's not good in the sense that it fluctuates pretty much every 6 months. And so from a developer's perspective, trying to go to a bank and get a loan, it's difficult unless they get a flat rate from the town, because the revenue rate from the utility is going to go up and down. And so that's just a hard thing to model out. But in the last 5-ish years, the average rate has been, it's in the slides, 11.6 cents per kilowatt hour. And right now, I'm sorry, the average rate was 9.3 cents. And it's presently 10.6 cents. It's been trending up, and the reason it's been trending up is because natural gas prices have been trending up, and that's what's been driving that rate. So there's another element as well, which is the REC. It's called the Renewable Energy Credit. And it's something that you can sell into the New England market. And right now, it's about 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So when you think of the total value that the project owner is bringing in for the energy, right now, it's roughly 14 cents a kilowatt hour, which is, that's pretty good for a 2 megawatt project. That's pretty good. But with the RECs, they're variable as well. It's a market. It goes up and down, and most forecasters think over time, after 2030, it's really going to trend down because there's just going to be more and more supply because there's more and more projects that are producing these RECs. So unless the states, and this may happen, the states may have higher thresholds for their states to meet renewable energy targets, and if that happens, that's going to increase the demand. So it's kind of anybody's guess. And so the good news is if you don't own the project, you don't have to worry about that. That's a risk that the developer as the owner takes, and they factor into their model.
Could you say just a little more about the load requirement?
Yep.
I mean, obviously, we can't know to the last kilowatt hour.
Sure.
So if you fall over, if you produce more than you can use,
Yeah.
what happens?
I don't believe there's, in New Hampshire, I'd have to look at their regs more closely, but I don't believe there's, they cut you off, but there's an attestation that you make in the beginning when you're signing up that your historical load is not more than the projected production of the project. And so if you go a little bit over, I think they're probably not going to penalize you for that. But if it becomes a large thing, like if the school then, I don't know, there's a merger in the district, and so it's no longer a school, I doubt they're going to hold you, because at the time that you signed up, you were attesting to something that was true.
Yeah.
But I can look. I don't know the answer to that question, other than they really try to have you design your project for your load as of the time that you get the project permitted.
But there's no way to have a non-municipal user.
There's not. Not if so if you wanted to have a less than 1 megawatt project, yes, you 100% could. And that's not a problem. But you get to be a bigger project by being a municipal project.
Right.
And there's lots of, I've got a list in here, sort of like, I don't know if there's a county jail. It's pretty broad in terms of the municipal piece, but they all have to be within, all of the facilities need to be A, on Eversource, and B, within the physical footprint of the town. But it could be, the county sheriff's office. It could be, they're just sort of like government entities. And so I don't know. We'd have to look at sort of what those are in the town to see how big you can make it. Sure.
Who penalizes if we go over the, is that PUC?
Yeah, so the PUC's rules, the regulations are which, put into effect the statute. They're the one, that is what says you need to, when you sign up, you fill out your form when the project is built. And you just have to attest that your load does not exceed your projected production. Now, you could have underestimated your production too, you know what I'm saying? So, but, as long as you document it and there are models and the financial model is built on the production model, and there's lots of documentation that you would keep so that if ever there was a small discrepancy and that they wanted to know why, you could show that, look, we made a good
I don't understand why they would penalize you. We just take that excess and sell it to the utility company or to other.
Yeah, so the public policy reason there is they think that this is expensive power that they're having to buy. And so they don't want you to be producing a whole lot more than you're using and then the utility has to pay more for that power than power they're going to buy from an offshore New England wind farm or something like that. That's where they're going with that. But they feel like that's why if you were to build a project at the place of the usage, they actually pay you a higher rate because that's more valuable to them because then there's nothing on the grid. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's reducing infrastructure costs. That's really ideally what the policymakers want. They want power produced at the source of.
I don't
of
perceive that to be our case, though.
No, it's not your case, and it's not most people's case. Frankly, it's difficult. It's not easy. But if you have a big company and they have a big roof, that works. But it doesn't happen as much as the policymakers would like it to happen, and as much as I think they think it could happen. Frankly,
I have a question.
sure.
So say, I know that there are some government officials in the state that are looking at regional usage. So if something like that was to pass, and so just say a town like Wyndham doesn't have a spot, and we were to make a deal with Wyndham for the municipal end of it, so their fire, police, school, libraries, and so we say, okay, we'll allow you to be on our site.
Yeah.
Would that be okay to do?
Not presently.
No, but if their
they change- yeah,
legislation
but if
happened.
they change the rule to say it has to be municipal, but it doesn't all have to be located physically in one municipality, then sure. Yeah.
Because that's something that's going on right now, because a lot of towns want to do this stuff, but they don't have space or a big enough space, and the little spaces they have, they don't really want to put in these, or it doesn't get enough light, whatever.
Right.
So they're trying to find that, and they're also trying to do this across other resources, such as water. There is an issue in the southern tier of New Hampshire with water, and some have water resources and some don't, but need those water resources. So they're trying to make it more, like Rockingham, like the Hillsborough, just as the county, to kind of have the bigger towns help the little towns help big towns, so that the whole area can have access to the resource that is available in that county.
From a practical implementation standpoint, I'm guessing the regulators as well as the legislators would be more amenable to allowing that across municipalities, but not across utility districts. So they'll
Right.
let you do it with another town, but that town has to be in the same utility territory, just because the accounting becomes a real challenge.
Isn't
Right.
that already going on? It's co-oping type?
Well, it may be, but not in this sort of municipal large project program.
I have a question. Hopefully it's okay, being new. When you say there'd be some penalties if we didn't meet sort of our criteria as we went into it, just as something that looking down the road as a foresight, what might those be as far as costs? Should we have something we should be prepared for, just in case, or?
So what I said was, I actually don't know the answer to the question. What I know is they won't let you go into the program knowing that your production will be greater than your load. What I can't answer for you right now is what happens if that becomes untrue over time. And I will get back to you. I just don't know the answer. Yeah. And I'm imagining that the answer will be dependent upon how, if your original representation was in good faith or in some way wasn't. That's probably going to have an impact on what my answer will be to you when I find out what the answer is.
We certainly wouldn't want to be underpowered, so to speak, because then we got to go buy from the utility. That doesn't make sense, right?
Say that again, I didn't hear.
We certainly wouldn't want to build a project that's not generating enough power, because then we have to go buy that differential from what we actually need and what's producing
Well, it's
from the
interesting.
utility company.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let's talk about that. It's a good question to elucidate a point. When this project is built, it's going to generate revenue based on that default rate that I told you about. And so the owner, assuming the town doesn't own it, the owner of the project gets that revenue, and then they allocate it in some way, right? They're either going to give you a discount, they're going to give you a half a cent on every kilowatt hour, something like that. They're going to pay you a lease payment. It's not as though you're actually getting the power. It's like economic value is derived, and then how does it flow out? So you still will have,
I was thinking in terms of we owning the project.
right,
May not
yes.
necessarily be the case
Right.
initially.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. My mistake.
And that value that comes from the project can get netted out by the utility in one of two ways. It can either be on-bill credits, so it could be that you decide with the project owner, if you don't own it, that the value is going to go directly to you, and then you're going to pay them some, percentage of that, as a fee. Or it can just be money that goes to the owner, who then figures out a way to get value to the town, which could be just a check, and then you just get your normal bill as you otherwise would.
So we have about another 5
Yep.
or so minutes for you,
Okay.
and then we have another presenter, so.
Yep, all right. So because I have the handout, I'm actually pretty close to the end, which is great. So in the development process, we talked a little bit about the utility interconnection process, which is it's a very key part of the whole process, because it's sort of like green light, red light. And then there's the permitting process, which is just this town, state, and local permits, and in this case, an EPA permit, or an amendment to a permit. And then, you build it, and those are really the phases of a project. We can help you in really any number of ways that you want us to help you. I think as a town, once you decide you really want to do this, you really need some consulting help, but you don't want to pay a consultant. And so typically, you will partner up with a developer or builder such as us, who's sort of willing, as a business development expense, to sort of do that consulting work for you. But then you're going to want to leave your options open a little bit in terms of who do you eventually use. And so that consultant usually has the inside line because they develop a relationship with you, but you have the benefit of, other bids coming in. And so we can talk more. We probably don't have time to get into it right now, but sort of how the best way to make that work is, both for you and the folks like us.
Okay. Does anybody else on the board have any last questions for Eric? Anybody? Anybody from the audience? Oh, sorry, Mike.
Yeah. So what's your experience, I think, if we're talking about making a financial commitment, that's something that's not in the budget, so it would be something that we would have to pass at the next budget, and that, we would get those dollars a year from July 1st. Which is, a while.
Yeah.
And if I understand you right, the way to speed things up, if we felt that was important, would be to take advantage of your development funds and start to work on your nickel, so to speak.
Yes.
It's a good summary.
It is. And I don't think you want to wait for a couple of reasons. Even if you don't wait at all, it takes a long time. These projects take a long time to bring to fruition. In the best scenario, in the best case scenario, maybe this thing gets built in the late summer, fall of next year. If full guns ahead.
At best.
At best. And it's probably the next year after that. But getting in and starting the permitting, you sort of grandfather yourself into the current rules, and the rules are always changing, and typically they're not getting better for solar. So it's good to take advantage of the rules that are in effect now. And, the grid's getting more filled up, people are building things, and so it's just, the only good thing about waiting is right now the economy is so nuts. Steel prices are high, the tariffs on solar panels are bad, so, building a year from now is actually a good thing
Not a bad
because
thing,
things are taking so long and are expensive, and I expect that to sort of sugar off a little bit in the next 12 months.
The other issue about the utility expense, they have what's called a pre-application phase. It's $500 per site. So if you pick 4 sites, it'd be $2,000. You would get a pretty good idea on capacity right off the bat. What you don't get is there any remediation that has to be done in the substation, or the voltage regulators that have to be swapped out, fuses swapped out. Those are the hundred thousands of dollars pieces of equipment of a substation, which runs a interconnection cost up very, very quickly. The wires are not, the wires are expensive, they're not that bad. So you could have a pretty good idea per site. We're not going to do that when there's a capacity issue there. We're not going to do that when there's a capacity issue there. The utilities typically won't divulge anything beyond that because they're going to charge you $25,000 for it. They're not going to, you can't speak to the engineers of Eversource, you can't speak to the engineers of any of these companies, they forbid it. There's
You
one,
can't speak to them, or the towns can't speak to
no
them?
one can speak to
No
them.
one can speak to them.
They're walled off. No. You can't, you can't, in Vermont, we have relationships with people in Vermont that have, we've been around for a long time. We call and say, hey, Mike, is there any red flags on that line over there? And they'll go, wait a minute. No. And so we,
On this, on the note of equipment, I mean, this is your game, I work in, I work at a hospital, so, you know, ask me about that. But the solar panels, the wires, everything, who's responsible for that? What if something, one broke?
the
And
builder. is,
who's
yeah.
disposing of these
Whoever
things,
the
you know?
owner
How
is.
does that work?
Whoever owns the project. I mean, that's the beauty of not owning the project is you just get financial benefits.
don't
and
have to maintain
You
it.
don't worry about
Okay,
anything.
I was, because they're big.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, my son lives in Littleton, I drive by, they have one of these big farms out there, I'm like, holy mackerel.
They're
You know, it's-
expensive.
It's like it's like oceans of them.
Right.
So you could regulate the amount of tows you have in the ponds, so to speak, by looking at sites and saying that's, we're not gonna get the capacity over there. They told us in the pre-app report that there just isn't capacity on that substation. And that's what you're really looking for. There's two different types of capacity. There's the thermal capacity of the line. If there's old uninsulated cables up there, or the old 1/0 or 4/0 type of stuff hanging on the lines, they gotta take them off. And they gotta rerun like you would from all the way 1.26 miles from where the three-phase stops on Auburn Road, starts and stops, all the way up the line. The only good thing there is there's a lot of brand-new poles on that street, so you save $2,500 a pop every time there's a brand-new pole there.
And the reason, and this will be the last thing I say, the reason, one of the reasons you want to find a good site means low development costs, is that means the deal to the town is going to be better. If it costs less for the developer to develop this thing, they can afford to give more economic benefit to you, the town. That's why it's important.
Which brings up the question, the site that we're considering, is that a good site, in your opinion?
We need to do more due diligence with the utility, but the first red flag is it's 1.2 miles from a three-phase line. And that's why I was saying, if we can get the load up to justify a 2.5 megawatt project, then it's a average site, depending on the cost of that upgrade.
It's a what kind of site?
Average. Right. If you only were going to do a 1 megawatt project, it doesn't work. It's uneconomic, because the infrastructure costs aren't justified by the size of the project.
The owner would grimace, but they'd still build it.
Yeah, I think at 2.5 megawatts, it would get built. It was just, there'd be less remuneration coming back to the town.
So what are you guesstimating based on the data
Yep.
that provided you as far as megawatt usage? What are you guesstimating as far as how many panels, how many acres?
Yeah. So given what you gave me, it's really only a 1 megawatt project. But with the schools involved, I think you can probably get to, it depends. I have to look, I don't know how efficient, how new the schools are, but, you know, I think you can probably get up to about a 2 megawatt project and use it all. Use all.
The acres?
A 2 megawatt project's going to take 10 acres. You have enough, yeah, you have enough land. And I'm
see it.
gonna leave this with you folks.
You can have one, too.
You can look at it later. And this is just a very conceptual preliminary design. And you can pass it around. So, I know we gotta go, you gotta get going.
Yeah, no, we
I
just
really-
have another person. and-
Can I ask one last question?
Oh, one last question,
Just,
yep.
can you briefly, the last page in your presentation, I didn't hear you address it. Could you briefly address what type of risk this may be for the town?
Sure. The good news is, if you decide not to own it, there's really no risk to the town. Unless you decide in the early stages to scope the project, to spend a little bit of money to try to scope it a little bit before you get a developer involved, and then your risk would be whatever the amount of those funds would be. If you don't own the project, there's really no risk, unless you sign, it's going to get complicated fast here, but if you sign a power purchase agreement with a developer, so you agree to buy the power at a certain rate, and that's a fixed cost, if your retail rate goes below that rate, there's potential for you to have a loss. We'll get into that later.
Well,
Don't think about that now.
For instance, it says here, assess necessary upgrades to roadways. If you determine that the roadways need to be upgraded, who pays for that?
You know, so that's on the actual cap itself.
The site itself.
At the site itself. The things you think about as the builder and the developer when you're assessing a site is what makes it a good or a bad site. Like we built in Manchester, there was how many vertical feet? 200?
212,
212 vertical feet from the staging area up to the cap.
3/4 of a mile.
Or you
to run.
consider that roadway?
That's yes.
Okay.
We're talking about the passageways
Okay,
for the
inside,
construction
yeah.
vehicles to build the actual thing, not the public roads.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's
You'd
all.
have, we look for roadways that are wide enough to get vehicles going both ways, or otherwise you choke out the pace that they're gonna be building, moving equipment to the cap.
Right.
Yeah. And landfills can only utilize, equipment that is 7 pounds per square foot or under.
Loaded.
So you can't drive a regular, not supposed to drive a regular pickup truck up there or anything like that. We have all our stuff has
Sure, probably
all been
disappear.
vetted and all that type of stuff. Yes, it's just tricks of the trade when you're looking at how we're gonna move around the site. And if we can't move around the site in 2 directions, then everything comes to a screeching halt. Right? And it's unsafe, yeah.
The good
Well,
news
thank
is
you
we're,
so
we're
much
free
for coming.
anytime, so more
I'm
questions.
sure we'll have you back again for
Great.
more questions.
Thank you very much. Have a good
I'm
evening.
sure of it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Drive safe.
Thank you.
For looking into it for the town.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. So we have the next thing on our agenda, which is CPCNH. Amy, I will be sending you a video. You're gonna be here next meeting. Electric school bus. Yeah, I was so excited when I saw it. I was like, wow, we can get money for an electric school bus. All right, so state your name and give us a presentation. I am sorry that I got the PowerPoint too late to be able to put on our computers.
Don't apologize. Yeah, no worries. Happy to do a verbal presentation. My name is Henry Herndon. I'm a consultant with Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. This is a nonprofit formed by 14 municipalities last year in October, and there are now 19 members of the coalition. And we have a board director, Craig Putnam from Hudson.
Hi, Craig Putnam? Yep.
Hey, Greg.
Um,
So
Yeah,
go
so,
right ahead.
so we're happy to do this verbally and appreciate questions, discussion as we go. We're going to start by forgetting everything we learned from the previous presentation. And this is a little bit of a different topic. Yeah, we're going to really just talk about 4 things. What is community power? How do you do it as Londonderry? What is Community Power Coalition? And what might be some next steps for the committee to consider? So I do have a presentation. I'll send that around. I'll make sure everyone has a copy of that, but we can just do this sort of in a
I
dialogue
did
way.
email it to all of them, but they got it late, because I got it late today, so.
So we'll start with what is community power. This is as a result of legislation that was passed in 2019. I believe Representative Doug Thomas was on the committee that moved this forward. There is the opportunity for municipalities to implement community power programs. This is a program where the town becomes the default electricity provider, and they will automatically enroll all their residents and businesses that are on the utility power supply into a bulk purchase. So there's sort of 3 pieces of this. One, bulk purchase, where you're purchasing electricity at the scale of the entire town instead of one by one residents and businesses. The utility company maintains control and ownership of the distribution system. They deliver that electricity to the residents and businesses, is part 2. And then part 3 is the value-added services and benefits for customers. So this could mean lower electric rates for your customers, greater choice for residents and businesses if they want to choose a renewable energy option. And then there's sort of a world of other possibilities and services that could come along with a community power program. So I'll talk quickly about the benefits, and maybe we'll dig into sort of like the what it is as well. But a number of the towns that are interested in this are interested in sort of democratizing the energy procurement. They can choose as a city or town what they want to prioritize, whether it's lower costs for the residents and businesses, choosing green energy options or local energy options. There are a number of other states that have these kinds of programs. Massachusetts, New York, California, these states have demonstrated an ability to supply electricity through a community power program more cost effectively than the utility default. And then there's a lot of potential for innovation down the line. Potential to develop local energy projects in the community that supply power to the collective residents and businesses, and then sort of other innovations that we may or may not get into. And so sort of just maybe I'll pause for a moment on the what is community power. I'm curious, is this a completely new concept to the committee? Is this something that folks are familiar with?
I have a concept of it. I mean, we had talked about it at a town council meeting. I sit on the town council, and we had a conversation about doing it, and it really didn't come to fruition. People couldn't figure out how to get there. So it kind of never really happened. Some people didn't like the idea of being forced into it. Why can't I pick who I get my energy from while you're forcing this down my throat? So there became, some stuff hooks that caught on, and it just kind of got put on a back burner. I'm not saying they're not looking at it. It just kind of got put to a side, and other things came up, and Mike had brought this to our attention, and we said, well, this is another alternative to look at. I did hear you mention, though, so if we did something, you said we could work together and be able to supply power. So you're saying if we as a town, just say, for example, had the luxury of floating a bond or getting a grant that allowed us to put in a solar, maybe not as big as that one, we could then run that through you guys?
Yes, so there's a couple of pieces I want to unpack. I'll start with that last bit. One of the long-term goals for a lot of these communities is to implement a community power program. The town and its provider, whether that's the Community Power Coalition or another company that you choose, the long-term goal for many of these communities through the coalition is to use community power to develop a solar array that not only provides power to your municipal facilities, but is actually providing power to all of your residents and businesses. You wouldn't necessarily bond for that. That could be financed and paid for through the electric rate. So everyone who's paying for that energy supply rate, they're paying the cost. There's no taxpayer funds involved with implementing these programs. You were getting into sort of the how do we do this in the process, and I want to touch on that. But I also want to touch on the sort of the choice piece of this. Other states call this community choice, and it's a voluntary program. So to implement the program, if Londonderry were to do it, there is an automatic enrollment of your default energy customers where they're sent a mailer. They say, welcome to Londonderry Community Power. You're part of the program now, unless you want to check the box and opt out back to the utility.
Would this augment, like our bill with Eversource? I mean, does this, or are you guys going to be sole?
It would be a
Be
dual, for most customers, it would be Eversource sending a bill that says Eversource poles and wires charges
Right.
and Londonderry
That's what I
community
was wondering,
supply
how you're
charge.
running this all in.
Yep,
But this wouldn't just be the municipalities, it would be the citizens, the taxpayers could also get a break,
correct,
which is swell.
yes.
Well, if the town isn't paying, like right now, we pay almost $300,000 in electric bills on the town side.
Yeah.
I don't know what the school side is yet.
Yeah.
But if we were getting that through our solar panels, that money would be, it would be in our undesignated fund balance, obviously. But, I mean, it would be there so that the tax rate
Yeah.
would, be able to stay
Sounds like that would be a good idea.
flat. I mean,
So,
it also
yeah.
benefits, both
Yeah.
ways benefit, but this, I guess, directly benefits,
Yeah.
especially if we put in an array and sell them.
Mm-hmm.
Then we, yeah.
Now, this would affect just the energy portion of the town's electric bill?
That is correct. So process-wise, how would a town do this? Community Power Coalition, that's a group of 19 communities that have sort of come together to form this new nonprofit company to share resources and to eventually provide all of the back office services for them collectively. Of those communities, I believe 6 or 7 have gone to town meeting or city council to approve a plan. So your process is a couple of steps. A committee, this committee or a subcommittee of this committee would develop a plan, a community power plan or an electric aggregation plan, and the legislation articulates what needs to be in that. So 7 of those members of the coalition, they've done that plan, they've got the template ready to go, they've passed it at town meeting, and that's a resource that's available to members of the coalition in terms of here's your technical guidance on how you develop a plan and what you want to consider in that. And that sort of sets your framework for what are our goals and how are we going to implement this. So that's really the how is Londonderry would say, okay, maybe we want to have a committee explore this idea further. That committee would be tasked with doing research and developing that plan. If Londonderry were to become a member of Community Power Coalition, Those are all things that all the other members and the shared services of that organization can support you in.
Okay, anybody else got questions?
Among the, how many, did you say 6 or so that have approved the plan at a local level? How different are they, those plans?
They're quite similar. There are modest differences. For example, generally, the goal is to provide more choices. So you will choose a default product that all customers will get, and that will probably be a little cheaper than Eversource and a little greener than Eversource if it's economically feasible. Then there will be an opt-up option, and that's some folks want to say, we're going to pay a premium. We're going to pay a little more money for 50% renewables or 100% renewables, but that's only if they affirmatively choose that. So some of the towns are more interested in saving money. Some of the towns are interested in renewable energy. They have modestly different parameters on sort of what is their default option and what is the menu. Also, in the plan, some differences. Some towns have, an energy chapter in the master plan, or they have some sort of resolution or policy with regard to energy. So they reference those differently in their different plans.
So it may be useful for me to, as a neighbor down the road, to tell you a little bit about our experience in doing this. So Hudson has taken the first several steps down this path, and one of the ones that Henry didn't mention is this document called the Joint Powers Agreement. And so one of the first things that we did, this was a subcommittee of myself, subcommittee of the Sustainability Committee in Hudson. Myself, my wife was the chair of the Sustainability Committee, and one other committee member. But mainly it's this other member and myself who have been, if you will, anointed by the town Board of Selectmen to be the Hudson Energy Aggregation Committee, HEAC. And we started researching this, went off and worked on this, and then brought the Joint Powers Agreement document to the Board of Selectmen. And after some legal review of that, the town said, yeah, okay, that didn't need to go to warrant article. Okay, that was just something that the board could decide to do. Because it obligates the town to absolutely nothing, and it costs the town absolutely nothing. Okay, but it gives Hudson a seat at the table with CPCNH. We now have some influence. So Hudson Board of Selectmen signed the Joint Powers Agreement last fall. And then the next step was to...
Can I just, it's an important point. So the Joint Powers Agreement, this is the intermunicipal contract between all of these communities that creates the coalition. And I'm going to give, this is a reading assignment to whoever you'd like to delegate it to on the committee, but it is an agreement among the municipalities to create this new corporation. It includes the bylaws of the corporation. It outlines how the board of directors will have one appointee from each member community. So it's governed by the municipal members up until 21 members. There are currently 19. And again, like Craig said, there's no cost to the joining the coalition. It's just getting a seat at the table. The cost is if Londonderry were interested in participating in this coalition, you would have to appoint a director and an alternate, and those individuals would be expected to participate in monthly board meetings and provide oversight to the organization. So Craig is one of the 19 board members.
Right, so I'm the director for Hudson, and the other lady is the alternate. So I do participate in, well, I'm officially on one committee, the Member Operations and Engagement Committee of CPCNH. I've had my arm twisted a little bit to join the Governance Committee, and I've agreed to do that, but I'm not official on that one yet. I've put my hand up to do a whole bunch of IT kind of stuff, which is more of an ad hoc committee type of assignment. So it's everyone's participating in various ways, depending on their skill set and availability and so on. So Hudson signed the JPA, a director, myself, and an alternate were named. And once all three of those pieces were in place, then at the next board meeting of CPCNH, then Hudson officially was inducted into CPCNH, if you will. And we were the 17th, I think.
I have a question. You mentioned, did I hear correctly that you said there were only 21 spots available and 19 are currently taken up?
So there can be unlimited members, but the bylaws say that each new member up until 21 will appoint someone to the board of directors. At that point, the board is capped, and it's an 11 to 21 person board. So the 22nd member could be a member and provide and participate in all the services, but would not necessarily have a seat on the board of directors.
And is this the only coalition in the state that does what you're doing?
Yes. There are private brokers and companies that offer community power services as well. So there are towns that are interested in sort of going alone or other models.
One of those is the one that you were talking about earlier, Deb.
Yeah, the one I talked to was, that came to the town was definitely a independent, they were in it to make money. So I have a question. So how much money is it anticipated for, I mean, I know it's an average or an about, could a town save using you all? And I guess, has Hudson started this? I mean,
Well,
how are the residents taking it? How are they benefiting from it already?
question,
What is the average benefit, per household or business?
So where we are in the whole series of steps for Hudson is we're still relatively in the beginning. So having signed the JPA, having created a committee, the committee is working on writing our energy aggregation plan for the town, and we're using the resources from CPCNH to do that. I'm writing it for the most part, and so it's I'm taking what some towns have done, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, trying to craft it for what I believe will be palatable for the citizenry of Hudson. What's required under the state legislation is that there are public meetings where the plan, once it's been approved by the Board of Selectmen, then we start going out to the public and having public sessions to educate and get feedback. Because there is poor messaging, misinformation around it. Yes, it's crafted as opt-out, but there's all sorts of safeguards and guardrails to keep that from being something that would burn, a resident. You'll get if we're on default power, Eversource. Hudson is completely Eversource. I'm not sure about Londonderry.
We're completely
And in terms of cost, some of the other markets see maybe 5 to 10% savings relative to the utility default. But another part of your question, so none of these programs are yet operating in New Hampshire yet. We anticipate that the first ones are going to launch early next year. There's still a rulemaking process at the Public Utility Commission that is not yet completed, but no programs have launched and are supplying power as of yet.
Yeah, so there are no definite prices, but we can look at what's happened elsewhere in the country and say, well, we could probably expect something like that.
Well, I mean, I was trying to compare in my head, the gentleman before you was saying how long it would take to get solar up and running, and if we do that, and I'm in my mind, I'm thinking how much money, the taxpayers save by the municipal savings, and then I'm listening to what you guys are saying, and trying to wrap my head around it. It's going to take almost as long, it sounds like, unless this legislation passes relatively quickly.
You do have the benefit of the town council structure, so you don't have to thread the needle on a March town meeting, if I understand your town structure correctly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to weigh in my head, the $200 and something thousand compared to the 10% or 5%. Like, which one would benefit the taxpayers better?
I don't think it's necessarily an either or.
I agree.
I think they can be complementary and really.
So we can do both. I thought we said we couldn't use our own solar panels.
Oh, no, you can do both. And you
okay.
could pursue this municipal array and do that, and that wouldn't interfere with your community power program, and you could pursue.
So this would be in conjunction with.
It could be in
would
conjunction.
augment another discount to the
Right.
taxpayer, correct?
And yes,
Great.
and so, there's, say, a year from now, you've moved very quickly, you formed a committee, you've passed a plan, you've gone to the town council, they've approved it, coalition's up and running, you're a member, and you enroll all your customers, and you're selling electricity to all of them. That's really the beginning, because from there, the coalition will be managing a portfolio of energy procurements, and that'll be from different suppliers, but also maybe they're going to sign a 10-year power purchase agreement with this gentleman's solar company, and they're going to develop a solar array here and directly contract for that power on behalf of the whole load of your community now. So, just launching the program and getting that 5% savings is step one. And
Okay.
then you want to evolve that there's sort of a long-term vision of using these programs to develop energy projects that benefit the community.
Well, thank you for clarifying, because I thought, at first I thought you were saying I had to do one or the other, but we can go down a parallel path and eventually become really self-sufficient.
Right. And it's you could do the project with him, and you could do community power and then potentially do other projects through that.
So just to follow up on Deb's point, so we could actually do an agreement with you guys with zero risk to Londonderry, correct?
Yeah, so the joint powers agreement is zero risk, zero cost, a seat on the board of directors, withdraw at any time.
So we could do them both at the same time and be no risk, like no financial risk to Londonderry.
Well, I mean, we don't have the power to approve any of
I know we don't, but I'm just, I
Sounds
know
like
we
he
don't
wants
have
the
the power to do
paper
it,
in the
though, I'm just saying.
penthouse.
But
So I do want to be
the fact that
clear.
there's no financial risk is a big,
No,
a
no, it
big,
is. It's a
a
good
big
thing.
thing
And
to,
I want to get to your question, but on the cost part,
Yeah.
that's, you sign the joint powers agreement, and then there's no cost until you've approved a program, and then there will be a cost-sharing agreement that will say, we agree that our electric ratepayers will pay for the cost of our broker services or the coalition services in their electric rate. So there will be a cost paid by the electricity supply rate.
But it will still be less than their Eversource bill.
That's
correct?
the goal, yes.
Yeah.
I think anything could be less than my
So basically, you're what's the word I'm looking for? An entity that combines a bunch of different municipalities to produce a lower rate through mass purchasing power.
Yes.
Has nothing to do with solar.
No.
It
Panels.
can tangentially
It can yeah,
involve
yeah,
purchasing solar, but it's more about procuring electricity.
It's about aggregating the load
Scale in
across.
terms of back office too, right?
Scale, yes,
Right.
exactly. So instead of each town having to, I mean, there are entities that each town can use, but, there's, rather than staffing up, this sort of creates oversight where there's pooled resources and shared costs across all of the communities instead of redundancies.
You mentioned a power purchase agreement, correct? Typically, how long would that be for?
So the coalition's approach is a portfolio approach. So rather than a single one-year supply contract or three-year supply contract, this is at a scale where the coalition's vendors will actually be managing a portfolio of layered contracts. So I can't answer your question with the specifics of how long is Londonderry signing up for. The general idea is this will become the way energy is procured in your town. But there's a key distinction is this portfolio procurement with different suppliers and different sellers. And some are rolling on or some are rolling off, and that's a risk management approach. So you can actively manage that portfolio to make sure, okay, the market's changing, we're going to respond, and we're going to keep prices low. So there's not a single fixed price, fixed term product.
Eversource, for example, goes to the market twice a year for a limited period, a limited window in the winter and again in the summer, and then they buy, and that's it. At the retail level, that's it for the next 6 months. It locks you in. Whereas the intent is this is being actively managed.
Yeah.
So would this take us off of Eversource's threatened rolling blackouts or brownouts?
So you would still be an Eversource customer. You would still pay them for delivery. They'll still maintain the grid. That's a very important service that they provide, and that will remain unchanged.
This is just the supplier.
I
not
know,
the
but I was
distribution.
hoping that
You were hopeful,
taking that
yeah.
burden off of them would.
It's who's making the electrons as
Take
opposed
it
to
off from
delivering them.
Well, to be truthful, it's not Eversource's threat. It's ISO New England, as you well know. So its entire New England region has made that statement, And projects like this would help to mitigate any of those rolling blackouts, should they occur, correct?
They could, and this is a longer term piece. So resilience is a theme and a goal, and that's, you set up the program and you're providing power, but then you can use that and really the revenues that the coalition will generate to invest into whatever local infrastructure might help avoid blackouts. So whether that's local energy storage, down the line potentially microgrids, this is a longer term vision. So I can't, promise it's going to happen on day one, but there is potential to really develop more local resiliency through these programs.
It sounds like you're a little bit more nimble than like, say, Eversource was just sort of kind of, I view it as a monolith, kind of. It's not very, what I want to, like, reactive.
That's
You're going to manage just
exactly right.
like a good broker with your money that's going to be constantly looking, at the market.
So this is why you can beat Eversource's rate, because the PUC says Eversource twice a year put out a bid for 6 months of power. And it's on a clock and it's a fixed schedule. And if the market's bad, when they go on that 6-month schedule, the market's bad and they got to buy expensive power. But this is nimble. This is managing a portfolio and can respond as the market changes.
I can understand that now. If it's like your money manager, I can understand that.
You didn't know you were rich.
No, I'm not rich, but I'm not going to be poor. Take my $5 and do something with it.
Right now, nobody's paying on their electric bill for the coalition's expenses. So how are you getting paid, Henry? How are the other people that are, providing this infrastructure for free to the town? How's that working?
So you are, in your energy supply rate, you're paying for energy, you're paying for capacity, which is a big cost in the energy market, and you're paying the broker's margin. There's a supplier that sells through Eversource, and they're doing a portfolio of their own, and then they're, accruing a 12% margin on top of that. So it's the same practice. It's just sort of opaque in your electricity bill right now, and we're taking that same service and we're lending transparency to it, and we're allowing this coalition to capture the margin instead of that private supplier.
Were you asking actually about the CPC&H startup?
Right.
Model?
Right now, nobody
Yes,
is
grants.
paying that into Eversource because nobody's, nobody's system has started yet. So
I misunderstood. Yeah, the Community Power Coalition has raised grants to pay for startup costs, and myself and one other consultant. There's a technical consultant, Samuel Golding, who's been very instrumental in sort of the design of this, bringing a lot of expertise from some of the other markets, and we are both currently compensated through grant funding.
Thank you.
Any
So-
more questions?
One last question. So I take it that Hudson opted out to solar power with this route instead of going solar.
No, we haven't opted in or out of anything at this point. We've joined the coalition. We're in the process of getting the energy aggregation plan written for Hudson. The next step is to get that approved by the Board of Selectmen. We then begin educating the public in anticipation of going to a warrant article in March this coming year. If the town then says, yes, good idea, let's have lower electric rates. At that point, the plan has been accepted by the voters of Hudson. Then we can begin the process of doing the setting up the default users to get to the opt-out point. One of the key things that we Hudson have to do is we eventually have to decide, so who do we wish to partner with beyond, how do I want to say this? We could decide to go with one of those for-profits that you've been talking to. And we've interviewed a couple of them already. Or we can decide to use the services and the brokerage capabilities of CPC&H. So that's a decision that's yet down the road for us. Until then, we've spent nothing, and you're not allowed to spend taxpayer money on this by the legislation. Any costs for doing this kind of thing have to be baked into the rate that the customers pay in their electric bill. But we're not there yet. So in terms of solar, Yeah, we've got a capped landfill. Who doesn't have one? Town doesn't have one.
Well, are you guys gonna be looking at that? And now that you've heard that you can
I
actually
hope
create and
so.
sell your own
Right.
energy?
I would hope that at some point in the future, we could use the services of CPCNH and perhaps in some other company to do a solar farm on that capped landfill. Hudson has been doing a form of community power aggregation for 11 years now on the municipal side
Okay.
Oh,
through NRPC, the National Regional Planning Commission. Yeah, thank you. And I believe I'm correct in stating that so has the SEU 81, the schools are also doing that, okay? Those loads are already, if you will, under contract for, some period of time. When those contracts, if Hudson for the retail side, okay, so individual homeowners, small businesses, that's what we're really talking about here, is allowing them to do that same kind of thing. So assuming Hudson moves forward with this, and the voters say yes next March, and we move forward, let's say with CPCNH, then at some point when the municipal contract comes up for renewal, then we have to decide, so do we continue on with who we've been partnering with on the muni side, or roll that load in under CPCNH? Same thing with the schools when that contract comes up, right? So the more we can aggregate, the better. I think with the 19 communities that we've signed up, CPCNH has signed up so far, we're looking at, what, about 20% of the load for the state?
20% of the population of the state.
Yeah, and I just sent your little, we call it presentation to Josh Borden and Derry, who came here last week, who actually helped us start this whole net zero thing. And they're the ones who just are in the process of getting their solar farm in on their dump. So again, it goes back to regional. It really does. We got to work on that legislative. We got to write letters. Why are you laughing at me?
Well, one of the things that
Pressure's on,
CPCNH,
Doug.
Yeah, Doug, I'm looking at you. You represent all of us
No.
here.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did want to ask, and I wish I could have done it earlier when the other guys were still here, is, Doug, what do you think the chances are of the 5 megawatt cap being extended beyond municipality facilities to industrial, most likely, and maybe commercial?
What do you mean being extended? Do you mean to go beyond five megawatts, like 6 or
No,
7?
To go beyond what is now 1 megawatt for a business, right?
That's up to the voters and up to the other legislation. Nothing's going to happen that hasn't already gone through committee and passed for this year, obviously, because nothing new can be presented until next fall. It remains to be seen how bills are worded, and it also remains to be seen how it affects the general ratepayers. One of the issues that we always look at on both sides is how does this affect other people's electric bill? Because as more and more people sign on to get, like, I'm talking about REX now, or net metering and things like that, it might affect an increase in other people's electric bills. So we try and weigh that. But we would be interested to see what kind of proposals come through in subsequent bills. Because as you know, we've had some very interesting proposals come through this year, and we've adopted some of them. And we're very interested in the community aggregation aspects of it, just for the reasons you mentioned.
And I'll just mention on that note, so Clifton Belo is, as of this morning, the chair of the board of Community Power Coalition. And he's worked very closely with the Science, Tech, and Energy Committee on both this legislation, but I think there was Senate Bill 321 may have passed this morning, which is a pilot that's sort of related to this. But anyway, there's a lot of expertise in the coalition in terms of policy.
I was just going to ask you if Lebanon was a member.
Yeah, Clifton
Yeah.
Belo is really
He would be
perhaps
he
the
would be
driving
the chair.
force.
Yes,
Yeah,
We do work a lot with him.
What I'll do what I'll do is I'll leave a hard copy of the Joint Powers Agreement. That's the founding document of the coalition and the bylaws. And if anyone on the committee wants to read that, I can send it electronically as well. If Londonderry is interested in joining the coalition, that's something maybe you want to give to legal, or maybe you want to have conversations with other members of the board.
Well, what I will do is I will send that agreement with your PowerPoint and have a conversation with the town manager, and who may reach out to you. His name's Mike Malaguti, and he, might have some questions. And at that point, we'll have a discussion and see if we can bring you back in to speak to the town council and see if we can, start it if they feel it's a good way to go.
We'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
can we get a
I would,
copy of that?
I would only ask that you be careful if you bring Mr. Bealow here to talk to us, because he will thoroughly confuse everybody here with his vast knowledge of technical information. He's so vastly knowledgeable that it goes just yards and yards over people's heads.
It's
Just
been
be
quite
careful.
interesting getting to work with him the past couple of years, yes.
Neither.
I never talk over anybody's head. So we want to thank you for coming in and spending some time with us and explaining all of this to us. And I'm sure you guys must miss your Hudson Litchfield, poor Lenny. God bless
Yes,
him,
we
he's a
certainly do.
sweet man.
Yep.
Because that was a great resource you guys lost, being able to reach everyone in Hudson
Yep.
and Litchfield. But
Yep. And let me state that I'm happy to answer further questions, come back and meet with you folks. I'm just down the road a little ways. so,
okay. Well, maybe you'll tag team when we do the council meeting again.
Sure,
You might be a little further along on your
working on it.
process.
Yeah, that's great. We,
Right.
and then we recognize, I think Henry's paid to be here, but you're not, Craig, and so we appreciate the volunteer nature of what you did tonight.
No, happy to do that. Thanks.
Thank
you
you
for your
very
time.
much.
Yep.
Drive
Thank you.
carefully.
I'll leave one of these in case somebody likes it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
And you will send that electronically, correct?
I will send that electronically. I'll send some follow-up.
Okay, and I will share it with everybody, if that's okay. It's not real private, is
No,
it?
not at all. It's, yeah,
Okay.
public.
I think you have my email as well from setting up this.
Yes.
Feel free to reach out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so next on our agenda is to go over what happened at the energy virtual meeting there that they had. I know a few of us went online or Zoomed in or whatever it is these days. To that, if you have got any good information that you'd like to share with the group, this is the time to do it. Anybody?
Well, relative to the two Zoom meetings that I zoomed in on, I sent out an attachment. Did everyone get that and read it?
Yes,
Do I need to go over that or hit the high points?
sure, go
You can
over
hit the
that.
high points for the people in the watching and for the newspaper. Thank you.
Okay, the first Zoom meeting was the energy kickoff meeting on April the 11th, which was a Monday. And high points. Well, it was Jean Shaheen and Maggie Hassan. They made some points, and both acknowledged basically that while renewable energy and clean energy was a source that we needed to go to, it was not going to replace oil and gas or fossil fuels totally by 2050, which was the net zero that everyone is talking about.
I think it's a moving target, but
I'm sorry?
I said I think the number's a moving target.
Yeah. And they got into biofuels, and I'm sure most of us old enough to remember back in the 70s when the OPEC and Saudi Arabia went up, started rationing oil and gas to us, and we had ethanol use, right? And basically that's disappeared from the pumps. So it's very little used. So ethanol has its problems in that it caused engine knocks, and the mileage was not as good. A lot of people complained about it, so I'm not even sure if that's going to ever come back, biofuels. And there's all kinds of different biofuels. There's like 3 or 4 different generations of it that they made point of. biofuels coming from sugarcane, corn, maize, and so on and so forth, diesel, they can make diesel out of it and so on and so forth. But it's not as energy efficient as gasoline. That's the thing I got from this thing.
Yeah.
And then additionally, during the actual Zoom meeting of these individuals, they talked about using more EVs and public transportation as opposed to your own cars. And the public transportation is going to go EV. And Mike, you had a question?
No, I was just explaining what EV meant.
Oh,
I
Electric
wanted to
vehicle.
clarify, but I needed to clarify people listening.
okay.
Yeah,
Electric vehicles. So there were three or four different presenters, and one of them, by the name of Eric Condon, who is a research fellow at the University Impacts Finance and senior fellow at Carsley School of Public Policy, and a principal partner at I-Squared Commercial Development, seemed to have a lot of information, and he might be a good source for us to refer to and talk to about going solar.
Okay.
And he pointed out a number of different issues with going solar. And there's like 9 of them, and I'm not going to go through each one of them. But there are some obviously benefits to solar panels and solar power. But be careful of who we seek financing from, because they may in turn have their own agenda. And small banks are probably more amenable to financing anything funds we might need, as opposed to large commercial banks, which typically sell the loans that we get in a package that has a high interest rate for investors to invest in, whereas small banks, local banks, are more,
Hold on.
And they keep their loans. They keep their loans.
They keep their loans, yeah.
and they're more adaptive to what's in the community needs. What else we had here? That's pretty much on the first thing, the first Zoom meeting. And the second one on Tuesday, April the 12th, I was disappointed in that. In fact, they didn't list any agencies that gave grants that we already didn't know. CFDA, the Community Finance Development Association, we knew about them. New Hampshire Saves, we knew about them. But they did mention another company, or another agency called Research Enhancement Award Program, or REAP, provides free advice on energy efficiency and availability of financial means to fund a solar project. And a company that keeps coming up in my research is a company called Revision Energy.
Yep.
Heard about them?
Yes.
They have an excellent project development record, and they seem to be a company quite commonly used in these types of projects. So I would suggest that we definitely talk to these people.
They're also a New Hampshire company, I believe.
Good point.
They're also
Yep.
a B Corp.
They were what?
A B Corp, a corporation that is chartered to promote environmental, social, and governance objectives.
So we should definitely talk to these people.
Revision
No
Energy is the company that installed the solar panels on top of the roof of the
Yeah,
Bellevue
Bellevue. Yeah.
Beverage Company, which is here in Londonderry, largest solar roof
So do you
right
think
in
we
the
should
state.
reach out, I can reach out to them, or
I can reach out to
wanna
them
reach out?
because
Oh, they would-
I know
they would be
Dan
glad-
Weeks, who works there.
so we can have them maybe come in on the June 23rd
Sure.
meeting? Because we have I booked the electric car people from the the state DES did a thing about, today on Zoom, about electric cars, and it was interesting, because remember, they said to look into it, and I said I would, so I watched this whole thing, and it was actually really interesting is how much money, I know it doesn't save the town money in the sense of energy costs, but they will put them in at the gas stations and in some places. So someone like Max Apples, for example, could get 2 of these charging stations, and they're putting them in through this grant through the federal government, And I forget, it was over $1 billion that they had for these things.
Volkswagen.
Yeah, for the Volkswagen
Yeah.
lawsuit.
Yeah.
And they'll put them in, and so people will pull off the highway to go to this destination, right? To sit there and charge their car and continue on the road.
Yeah, they say that that there is an opportunity to bring people to your town to shop and.
Right, we don't have necessarily
Well, that's one of the
downtown,
points-
Yeah.
but,
That's one of the points they made in a Zoom meeting, is put these charging stations more in the rural areas, because those people out there have a farther commute distance to where they want to go. So put
well, yeah,
the,
they come in, they stop, so
made
there's
the
something
point.
to look at, and so it would help the businesses in our community.
Yeah.
And the lady said there's a lot of finance out there for them, and and so like the Red Arrow, off of the highway, they said those are the ones that they
Yeah,
really
the-
want to
the-
target.
Stop on as you're going up to Concord, right on 93. They talked about that. They said that there was Loon had put in several of these charging stations.
Dover is loaded with them.
They're right over at Derry Town Hall.
Derry, yep.
Yep. Well, Derry's Town Hall, they shut them down. And actually, when I told Josh about this today, he was very excited because they weren't making enough. I don't know, I can't remember what it was, but they ended up having to pay too much. So they ended up, because the people would go and charge so much energy. It had to do with the timing and
Who's
stuff like
paying,
that.
who's paying for the energy, like when, if I go plug my EV in, and I'm paying?
Right, you
Who's
pay for
gaining,
it.
who's gaining from this?
You. Well,
Does the town make money off it?
no.
No.
But you pay to use the pump, right?
you have to
Yeah,
pay at
you
the
pay to
pump.
use
Yeah,
it.
it's a rate that's put,
The only
settled by the
benefit for the
PUC, I
town
think.
is to pull people in, to
Right.
let them stop, that may have not stopped in Londonderry. Oh, we need to recharge our car on our way up to Mount Washington, we'll stop here, cause I saw there's a charging
There's a
station near a
charging
little
station.
restaurant, and they'll go do it. I mean, that's really.
There'll be more
I mean,
more
it's not like
traffic.
Dover, where they got all the college kids and things,
Yeah.
it's a whole different
Right.
ball of wax in that area, than us, but.
Martha, did you mention that you knew Dan, is it Dan Weeks? Or
Dan Weeks, yes.
Because his name, he was presenter
Yes,
in one of, so you
Yes.
watched it as well?
I watched several of them, yes.
Okay.
So so I know this is off kind of thing, but yeah, I did go to this, not go to, but watch this Zoom. It was very interesting. And I asked her to pop by on the May 19th, which is our next meeting, just to talk about it. But there is money that they're giving back to the schools for using electric buses,
Correct.
Buses.
which
But-
I thought,
but
they trucks,
But the
towns.
schools don't necessarily own their bus,
But they get a break on the cost of the bus, is how it's supposed to
You
work.
said Dan Weeks is coming the next meeting?
No, the June 23rd.
no, June 23rd,
Okay.
right? June 23rd, you told me, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's tough when we have two.
Yes. I mean, it takes up a lot of the meeting time.
Yeah. So anyway, the thing was interesting. They, because we had talked about town vehicles, they have trucks now, and the
Right, they did talk about
those
town
little-
vehicles
we have
going
the
electric.
golf, the little go karts there, the Gators that they got on the school side. I believe are all electric as it is now.
Yeah.
But so that was that. They talked about putting in, encouraging ordinances when they're putting in the planning board, when they're putting in parking lots,
Yes,
to add this.
Park
to
and
their-
rides, yep,
To now have
yep.
it, the park and ride was another one.
right.
So I don't want to get too much off track. Martha, you said wait a minute,
What-
Bob, you were done with your,
Yeah, pretty much. So, I think I'm really looking forward to hearing from Dan Weeks, because Revision Energy seems to be very popular and prevalent in this solar panel business.
okay.
And what I particularly like about that is that it is a New Hampshire company, and the two people that we've had come in are both from Vermont. It would be nice to use a company that's a New Hampshire-based company.
Agreed.
But I must say that Aegis, if I can pronounce it, the gentleman was pretty informative.
He was informative.
Yeah.
I did work with Revision on a project for our church, which it turned out was not feasible, but they're great to work with, very straightforward, very candid, very helpful.
Okay.
So
the projects that they talked about during the New Hampshire week that they highlighted, you must have seen that portion of it, right? Where they talked about the sawmill.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they were very interesting projects. And one guy from Keene had, actually, he wanted a place to house his business, but he needed a strong internet connection because it was an internet-based business. And so he purchased a church in downtown Keene. And he, when he moved in, there was like tons of, it was drafty, had, so many issues. So he had numerous
Leaks.
measures that he did to get that space fit up. I thought that was interesting.
It was, and I didn't want to get into that because it's kind of a personal story.
Yes,
but
it is. It
that
was.
May not fit our situation.
No, it
But
doesn't.
one of the interesting things he did bring up was this company in Massachusetts, I can't remember, Aero something, remember the
Yes.
mist to find the leaks? Pretty good technology.
Yeah.
So we ever get in a situation where we're gonna audit our energy efficiency in these buildings, municipal buildings, to find leaks?
I think
Doors,
that
walls,
that-
wherever?
I think
I
that's one of
think
the
that's
steps
one
we
of
have
the-
to take.
the
and that's
first
next in the
steps.
agenda.
that we have to take. Okay.
So, well, it's the third thing coming up. So I guess Energy Week was worth visiting. You guys got some
Yeah.
information and stuff out of it. The next part is getting Dave Wally to engage with us so that he can bring stuff, because he knows what's been done in the building, what needs to be done, when it was done, what wasn't done, and what could possibly be done. So on the school side, the person who couldn't be here, this Alan Miller, is that same sort of business, building
Oh, great.
kind of guy on the school side.
So what position is Dave Wally?
He's
What
like,
is he?
Whose position
not
did he
Janos.
take?
Well, Janos' position got divided, and basically he handles all the DPW, waste management, and building maintenance.
So he's not
He's a town employee, and he does live in town.
okay, all right. He
So
doesn't work for the town, though.
yes, he
Oh,
does.
he
Yes,
does?
he works for the town. He's new.
He's very new. He came from Salem. And just so that, when we have questions, I wouldn't have him here all the time, but at least get him on our email list so he knows what we're talking about and be able to, when we're ready to do those steps as evaluating the
Do those
buildings.
steps. I think he's the one that we have to coordinate with.
Yeah, we'd have to work really
Closely with him.
very close with him.
Officially, Dave Wally is the Director of Public Works and Municipal Facilities for Londonderry. That's his
There you
official
go.
title.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that would be a good thing. I do think that we need to, that's like, besides keeping moving forward with, getting information on solar and other things that are out there, we really need to sit down with Eversource and that, what was that, NH Saves? And there was another company, they said, Eversource, other study, to do a study, and it was, I think we have to get those studies updated that the last energy group did, because it was, 2009 or 3
Right, I think that we
something?
have to have somebody come in, whether it's Eversource, one of these people, whatever, we have to find out
Do
who
an
we
energy
can get,
audit.
preferably somebody who could do it for
Right.
free. And if not, then we have to find, I used to work, years ago when I was working for an energy services company, and they did these energy audits for municipalities. So I'm definitely happy to call somebody at my old business and find out how that would work now.
So I guess this is up to the committee.
Well,
Does everyone on the committee think?
Can I make a point here?
Yep.
Prior to the meeting, Doug and I were talking outside, and Eversource, according to Doug, controls funds. And somewhere in the readings that I had, New Hampshire Saves came into play as far as a $25,000 grant to do an audit, an energy audit. But I guess that would be contacted through Eversource. I'm not sure of that, though. Or we go directly to New Hampshire Saves to find out. Possibly they could provide the funding and the personnel to do this energy audit, if not Eversource themselves.
Right.
Well, I mean, first we have to make the decision if everybody thinks that that's like a step we have to take. We have to have a consensus, is that's what we want
I
to do.
definitely think it is.
Definitely, yeah.
The
Does everybody
cheapest-
agree?
The cheapest energy is the energy you don't use. I mean,
Right.
Okay,
it's a no-
so,
Shut those lights off.
so,
And it seems to me,
The wise
from what I
gentleman here.
found out already from talking to Dave Woolley briefly on the phone, is that the project that was initially done for the town concentrated mainly on lighting. On lighting.
so everything else
And
wasn't
that
done.
there's other measures that you can put in, even connected to lighting, that wasn't done, which is when you walk into a room, the lights come on. When you walk out, the lights go off. And when the room's not in use, there's no lights on. But when you walk in, now the light will go on. And that's just, a simple,
Common sense.
measure to put in. And there's,
And
and
heating.
there's numerous others.
Getting an
There's
air conditioning in the
heating, there's-
summer, yeah.
There's other things. So I'm willing to
So I think-
try to track down New Hampshire Saves if you want.
well,
Do all the town lighting, LED lighting, is that what it's called?
Pretty much, they
There's
think
some that
that
aren't.
there may be some that aren't, but pretty much I think they all are, because also most of our municipal buildings are very new. We have the fire station was just redone, Central Fire Station. The other two fire stations are fairly new. This building
Police
is
station's new.
probably the oldest now. And the police station, all fairly new buildings. The library probably
the
is
library's
old.
older than this.
The library may be
Yeah,
older
it
than
is.
this.
It
Can
is.
you confirm with,
So I think the first steps, so just everyone listen for a second. The first step is to reach out to Dave Wally and also the school. Woolley, sorry. And the school, Dave, right, which is Alan, right, to get that data. Because I think we have to work with the school on this, we really do. And this energy audit will be of the town and school, hopefully for free. And we'll have to reach out to Eversource and New Hampshire Saves and your company to find out who we can get to do this audit, the best audit for free. And then we got to put all that data together
Correct,
and then submit it to the town council.
correct.
Does
Who,
that sound correct?
I can reach out to Eversource, no problem, to find out who their contact is for New Hampshire Saves.
Okay, so
Okay.
Doug is gonna
Okay,
do
Doug.
Eversource.
Great.
Yeah.
You're gonna do your
I'm gonna do Dan Weeks revision.
Dan Weeks revision and your old company that does the audits.
Yep.
And so now we still have New Hampshire Saves, or is that part of Eversource?
That's what Doug's doing.
They manage New Hampshire Saves for their
Those
area.
are together, okay.
yeah.
So
We're
we'll
not-
get those together, and since you're because I can't talk to them, but you can, so you can talk to Dave and say, Dave,
Also, Ron can talk to him, because Ron did send me an email and asked if he could speak to him, and I did get the go-ahead for him to contact him directly
From Malaguti.
from Malaguti.
Okay.
And Ron would also
Okay,
was
so if
going to
you feel
invite
like you're
him to
doing
the
a lot-
meeting. So he was going to invite him to our next meeting
Okay,
in
so
May.
we'll put you in as getting a hold of Dave and telling him what
Yeah.
we're doing, explain to him what we're trying to do, and the audit we're trying to get done, and make sure that it's a very detailed audit. And then we gotta get the guy on the school side who I don't know, this Alan Miller, I don't know him.
And so that was going to be my next question. Who's contacting the schools and?
It can either
and-
be, I can do
and-
that, it's not a
and-
big deal, but.
And if you have to go through Amy, I don't know any of that.
Well,
Or
that's
through
who
the
I'm gonna go
superintendent's
through.
office,
I'm
or,
gonna go through Amy, and then Amy will know who to speak to on her side to get them
okay,
on board to do the audit at the same time, because I would think it's more cost-effective and more efficient if they're both getting it done all at once, right?
We also need to we needed it tonight. We need to find out what the school district's usage is of electricity.
I have an email in, like Amy told me who to send it to. I
good.
can't remember the person's name, so I'm so sorry. I think it might have been Lisa, I don't know. Anyway, I have an email in to the correct person, so we should be getting that pretty quickly. because I do think we need to see, you know, electricity, I put electric, water, gas, and oil, just like we got from Justin. So,
Yeah. And you could even forward that to the Aegis guys and say, does this change anything you told us?
okay.
And I think that, I don't think it would be a bad idea for you to check with the town council to make sure we're not overstepping our bounds by going and doing this for the school too. I mean, obviously, I think that's a good idea.
Be Amy that's doing it.
Okay,
She's like the same as me
okay,
for the school.
okay.
She's gonna bring this information back and hopefully convince them that this is a good idea.
Okay,
I
good.
mean, we need to be frugal now more than ever, and this is a good step.
Excellent.
In showing the town and school can work together in saving money for the taxpayers. So, I think that was about it. And I do think we need to research this NRPC and SR 81, that he said were municipal, energy suppliers. Like, that's who Hudson is using now. It was a NRPC, and then on the school side, it was SR 81. And he said that was like,
No,
No, that's not
that's
one.
the school,
That's
that's how
their-
they
that's
identify
their-
their school
Well, they
system.
use somebody else.
SAU 81 is
and
their
he
school
said some other
system.
company, I'd have to go back in the tape and look. Did anybody else hear them say those?
Yeah, there was those two, they're both energy management companies. They're basically competing with.
Well,
energy
could we just email them and ask them who they use? Like,
Yeah, I guess. I just wanted to know how
Yeah.
that worked and what.
is
they
it,
were.
does SAU mean schools? I like
Yeah.
to denote the school, right?
SAU
Yeah.
bill, I'm so stupid.
No, I,
It was SR 81,
Yeah, that's school.
yeah. So I guess that really, I already talked about that, we did that. I talked about the electric cars. So now we just need to approve the minutes. Does,
Public comment, don't forget that.
well,
Just-
there's nobody here.
I know, just,
Who's gonna be contacting these two entities that we just talked about? Are you gonna,
Well, first I gotta find out who they are. So I'll call that guy from Hudson
okay.
and ask him, because it was something that Hudson was doing, just to see who they were.
Greg Putnam.
And then, so the only other thing we have to do is approve the minutes from 3:17,
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
okay? Did we have any changes or anything? No?
No.
Okay, so all in favor of the minute, all approvals?
Aye.
Aye.
You have to abstain because you weren't
I
here.
abstain, that's fine.
I understand.
Mike abstains
Whatever
because
you
he
want.
wasn't here. That's okay.
I'm new at this, so.
You'll get it, don't worry. Okay, so that's good. Just so you know, our next meeting is May 19th and June 23rd.
So motion passes.
Motion
Okay,
passes.
so-
1, 2, 3, 5 yes, and 2 abstentions. And so the next two meetings, May 19th, June 23rd. And on May 19th is the electric car one, and on June 23rd will be Mr. Weeks. Hopefully. I'm sure he'll come.
I will report back.
I'm sure he'll come. Other than that, this is a time to talk. Anybody have any ideas or comments or discussion?
I'd like to bring one thing up. I
Yes.
think the biggest thing we need to consider is if we're gonna do solar panels, we need to think about three-phase power. Because that was the first time I heard somebody actually mention a dollar figure. 800,000 to $1 million. So if we decide to do Auburn Road, three-phase power is not there. And that's one of the things that, right now, is a lot of pushback on Auburn Road because it's not three-phase power, so.
Is that why he was saying it was only like an average site?
Yeah. Because if we only went with the town right now, they couldn't afford to do the project unless we got the schools on board.
Correct. 'Cause
So just something to think about in the background mind.
Is
while we're
Auburn
thinking
Road
about
that one
sites.
back that goes up, it connects with Kendall Pond near South
Yeah.
School?
No.
Yeah, 'cause there's one of those there,
Where
too.
Four Boys is, you know.
Oh,
where Four
down
Boys
that
is,
end,
it's
okay.
All
Right.
the way down
Right.
till you come to the T.
Because they have another dump site there, I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up watching that one turn into a dump, so I mean, I
Where?
don't think, if you, I grew up in Chase Road, just, so that was down South Londonderry end. If you, say you're going to, on Kendall Pond Road and you're going down to South School,
Yeah,
before you get to South School, you can take a left and you go over the, like, little, there's like a little, the Beaver Brook goes through there. And if you go to the left, you're gonna go up through Derry. It's right up there. like-
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
And you see those big white gas things coming out of there. So there's a site there as well.
I thought that was in Derry, though. No?
No, I think it's, yeah, it's before Derry.
It's not the one
Well,
that you
one of the
pass on the
things-
highway, then?
One of the
No,
things
no, no,
if somebody wants to do is they can make an appointment to come to town hall and sit down with Amy, the GIS gal, and she can pull up the maps and show us what sites would be
Yeah, because
available.
there's a couple, right? I mean, there's, yeah.
I don't know what we own and
Yeah.
what we don't own,
Right.
because a
Yeah.
lot of them, we own development rights to,
Yeah.
that we can't use.
We don't own outright.
And then there are some that are just
The
conservation,
Superfund
which of
sites,
course, you
Yeah.
can't build it on
No.
conservation.
But they're sticking just solar panels on top, I mean. It's not, that's like not doing anything to it, just
Well,
hanging out on top.
I think, I think there are rules, Mike would know, right? There are rules. You can't just throw solar panels in conservation land, correct?
It depends on what the easement is that's in place or what
Yeah.
commitments we've made.
But that's not what you
But
meant,
you can't
was it?
put them
Did
on
you
top
mean-
of trees either. You
Yeah,
don't have to cut
conservation, or did you
trees
mean
down.
on the roofs?
Oh, no, I'm talking about, this is just, it's open, they have grass growing out. No, it's just mound. There's no trees on it or anything. It's just,
I
it
don't
was an
know
old
what
like
that
dump
site
and it
is.
just,
What would be
Yeah.
useful, I think, is I don't know if we have this information or if it's part of what
It's all
Eversource
open.
doesn't want to talk about, but if we could get a map of where the three-phase power is in town.
yeah,
that would-
that's probably more important.
That would guide
That
our
would be
search.
Doug.
And
We have a relationship with people
Pretty-
there, right?
Yeah, we could probably find out, in fact, next Tuesday, I'm actually going down to their control center in Manchester. I might be able to ask that question then. Whether they have a hard copy or not, they probably have it on their, GIF area, but I could ask, that might be would you like to narrow it down somewhat? I mean, do you want a
Yeah, I mean,
three-phase all over
ideally-
town or in a specific area?
Yeah, the
we
Superfund
could
sites or
have
anything?
Amy then put whatever we think is appropriate, a half-mile buffer around those lines, and that will give us a search area that we would want to look in to, do a
Well,
possible.
like I said, do you have a specific area that I could ask about? You don't want any, do you want all the three-phase in
I
town?
guess we have to, if they're small pieces of land, right, then we have to do
They'll
like
be
that other.
linear, it'll look like a cobweb, but-
Yeah.
But I don't think there's that many, unfortunately, for our
Yeah.
purpose tonight.
Yeah, we have to take everything into consideration and to try to move this forward. We gotta think a little bit outside the box. But it's process of elimination and moving forward.
I would definitely like to have Mike Malaguti take a look at that agreement, because I think even if, without costing any money, if Mike could approve that, we could put somebody on that board, at least have our seat on the table for a possible, another project that didn't cost us anything.
Right. Actually, hand that down to Mike, because he's good at contracts. I know some of the people's strengths.
But if Mike looked at that and said it was something we could do, then we could go to town council and say, this is what we'd like to do, how do you guys
Yeah.
feel about it? And if they voted yes, then we could choose someone from this committee.
And as Doug pointed out earlier, there's only 2 slots left if we want to be guaranteed a
Right.
director.
Right.
Right.
And we wouldn't have to do it in the future, so.
So it brings up the question, what do we want to pursue?
Well, you can pursue both of
Both,
them
yeah.
parallel, because you can opt out at any time at no cost. And
But which one is more readily attainable?
I think they're gonna be both at about the same time when they're done.
Yeah.
My impression was these guys.
They sounded like they had a lot more to do, didn't they? Like another
Well,
year or so.
Sounds
And
like
then they
everything's
said it
gonna
would be
take
a
time,
year to
though.
put in a solar
Yeah, I
thing,
can't-
so it's like,
The timeline looked pretty similar to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it looked pretty
Yeah.
similar.
It all
too.
sounds like it's just gonna be,
But, I mean,
Consider the
this-
Uncertainties, Doug can tell you how good is the PUC at hewing to its own timelines, and its suspense dates, they've been, churning out this study on, the cost and benefits of solar for, few years now. I mean,
Right.
it's-
Yeah, they're about to undergo a major revision here as they're being, not absorbed, but they're coming under the DOE, Department of Energy
Right.
administratively anyway.
Right.
And also the SEC is going to be strategically reimagined, shall I say, in the coming months or years. So, yeah, it remains to be seen how that's going. We're hoping it speeds things up and streamlines it more so that, they have more time to work on what they need to work on when those sites come through.
I hope that is
Yeah,
what
I'm
happens.
just concerned that we might be biting off more than we can chew and trying to pursue two things at one time, and we just get bogged down in the details of both of them.
I don't think
know,
so,
I mean-
Bob. We split it up. I mean,
Well, that's a good point, Ron, and that's what Doug and I were talking about pre-meeting, is we're both confused as to who's handling what.
okay.
We need to have,
But, by the way, just FYI, I've already gotten the contact name and so forth for the New Hampshire Saves from Eversource, which I can be contacting that person in the next couple of days. And also, they're checking into the three-phase map lines in Londonderry, but it depends. If those three-phase lines, if you're talking about them being transmission lines, it may be considered a critical resource and not, releasable. But if it's distribution, then that's a different story.
think it's-
They're checking into it.
If it's a three-phase distribution line, it should still serve our purposes. Then you could run into a thermal problem, but you gotta start somewhere. You gotta start,
Well, right now, there's a bill going through, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen in the Senate, but there's a bill going through, as we get into solar projects, and the panels transmit electrons over some wires. Right now, there's a bill that's going through that there's going to have to be a definition arranged, because technically speaking, if you are transmitting power, that could technically be a transmission line. If it's a transmission line, it comes under ISO New England and charges and fees and so forth. But if it's redefined, it may not have to. So it's being studied right now. It's these new
Complicated.
technology presents new issues under the old paradigms.
Absolutely.
Is there an interest, though, for us to, not to be reactive, it's better to be proactive, but to sort of secure a slot in that 22-seat board, or?
Well, that's what
Yeah.
Ron just
I,
said.
Yeah.
I think we should at least try.
Yeah.
What we're gonna, I think the first step is, I'm gonna, once I get it electronically, I'll send it out to everyone. And
Yeah.
what we'll do is, if we want, as a group, we can't do it all together, because that would be a quorum.
Yeah.
But, like, three of us could go talk to Mr. Malaguti, whoever would like to do that, it doesn't have to be me. Can go and sit with Mr. Malaguti and talk about this, and see if we wanna just move this forward a little bit, because there's no cost to it, no cost
That's
to
what
the
I'm saying,
town,
yeah,
no
Right.
cost to anything, but it would ensure that we would have a position
exactly,
on the board, which
Yeah.
would be nice.
yeah.
And if we decide not to, then, oh well.
Oh, wow.
Whichever happens, it seems to me that they could both go down the same path, and potentially, the perfect end of the day would be, the school's all on board, and the solar panel thing moves forward, and we find out that there's a connector that we can connect relatively quickly to, and this moves forward, that in like 2 years, you could see a step being taken to an actual means. Do you know what I mean? Like, but in the interim, the low-hanging fruit would be the survey that would be going. So there are actually three
There's a lot
things
going, yeah.
that survey.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, that audit would be going on, and little things can be done, both on the school and the town, just to tweak us and bring us up, to save a few dollars. And then that kind of moves us, at least that's what I see. That would be the perfect storm, is that they get their stuff together, and we figure out that we can put in this plant and this solar array, and it works perfectly, and you're talking about saving a lot of money for both citizens, businesses, and the municipals, and the schools.
Right.
I'm just wondering if,
Almost too good to be true.
I'm just wondering if these guys right here, if we go with them, it's gonna have any influence on the pricing of the solar guys. Because they might perceive these as, these guys as a threat, maybe. I'm always looking for a competitive edge. Don't think so?
No, I mean, the one
No.
guy is gonna be a supplier to the other guy.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Right.
They
buy,
would benefit from each other, if
Right,
anything.
I think so, because that's what they're just purchasing energy.
They would feed
That's
off
all
each
yeah,
other.
yeah.
they're doing, and they're making a bigger buy on behalf of, several towns together.
Now, on another note, there are oil companies. I know this isn't electric energy, but we do have a huge oil bill on both school and town, oil and gas. When you look at that, that's like another big chunk of change. There are these kind of cluster buys or
I wanna
bulk
do that too,
buys
yeah.
in the oil and gas industry. I found one of them online and I was looking at it. Now, I don't know if they do municipals and I don't see why they wouldn't, but I think that because they buy in bulk, what they said to me on the phone is that and I told them, who we were and what we were thinking of, and they said, yeah, they said you just apply for it. It costs $50 for the year to buy into their company, and then you get this bulk rate. And the bulk rate, it's kind of like a BJ's, you go
It's
to
like
the,
a co-op kind of thing?
kind of a
yeah.
co-op thing, yeah. And
but shame on us if we're not already doing
Yeah.
that.
I don't think we are. I think that municipals think, because like the woman was taken back by me saying it, and she was like, "We can do it." She says, "But we've never had anyone ask." And I said, "Oh," and so I was gonna call her. I just didn't have time, but I thought it was interesting. But they said they could save anywhere between 25% to 50% on your oil and gas bills by buying in this bulk, depending on.
Well, we should
The
find
prices
out
and-
if we're doing it.
Well, it's a good
Well,
question
I'm
for Dave
gonna
Woolley.
call Justin.
Yeah, that goes to Dave Woolley.
No, that goes to Justin.
Oh, that goes to
Justin
Justin?
pays the bills and the invoices. He would know who our
Yeah,
oil
between the
company
two of
is.
them.
Yeah.
So he would know how many gallons of oil and gas that we use?
I sent out a long time ago at the very beginning, and I can resend it out, a breakdown that Justin sent us of
Yeah,
what our
send it out
electric bill
again.
was, what the water bill was, what the oil and gas bill.
But what we're talking about now is what is the contract between the town and that supplier, and are we
It's
getting
a
a
year to-
favorable rate for?
It's a year to year, and it's a $50. So it's kind of like if you have a BJ's card and you get like 10 cents off of gas. It's-
No, he's asking what it is now.
What's the current one?
Oh, I don't
what
know
it
who
is.
we use. I have no
Well,
clue.
that's what Mike's asking.
Oh.
So-
And
so if you
again, I
just-
think that's
yeah,
all Justin.
Justin will tell you that, and he may refer you to Dave.
Dave.
Between the two of them.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can ask that.
I
But
also
will
have
you
a-
send out that thing again?
Yeah, I'll resend the,
Yeah, I got a copy of it here.
oh, there you go.
Oh, I don't have it with me.
Resend.
And the guys who did my energy audit on my house, and unfortunately can't remember their name, but I will look that up and get that to you, because as we go out to look for these energy auditors, we throw them in the mix.
Yeah.
We really just need somebody to come in and say, this is what an energy audit looks like and what it could do for you.
Right.
And then we're gonna have to put out an RFP and get, a bunch of quotes on,
Unless we can get it for free.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be surprised.
Free's always a good price.
But I mean, we need something thorough, not something,
No, I know.
not
I
just a head
You
scratch.
weren't here when, were you here when Josh came in, Josh and Jeff from Derry? No. So one of the things, I'll actually reach out to Josh. He did not send it to me. Josh to send me the Derry audit and who they got, and so I can show it to you and see, so y'all can see the detail of it and see if that's
And you know who did theirs?
New Hampshire Saves.
I'd be surprised if they didn't contract an engineering firm to do it, though.
Well, Net Zero and Derry's kind of like us. They don't really have any money, but they're getting money now because they've proven that they can save the town money. So now they're,
Is Derry, do they have their solar sort of plant running currently?
I'm sorry?
They have all their solar panel things, their little farms
just being
running
built.
out?
Just being,
I say, would it be neat to see before and after savings, anything like that, if one was running?
Yeah, we don't have that yet.
No.
So I just got another answer back on the three-phase line. They said the contact point there is a Mr. Levesque, but they're more able to help us if we have a project being planned. And then he said they can be talked to, they'll come down. But they said also, all of the developers know him anyway, and that's who they would be. Well, obviously, the guys that he were from, they wouldn't know him because they were from Vermont, but everybody here works through Mr. Levesque on answers like that, questions like that, and, power, phase lines, solar fields, and so forth. That's his bailiwick. But they said he can't answer the question unless he knows that you have a project that you have in mind. So once you decide,
Chicken or the egg thing.
Right.
so,
We know that it's a long line from Auburn Road to get to where we have to get.
I mean, we could find out what that is, yes.
Well, he told us tonight, didn't he
1.3
tell us
miles.
tonight?
It's a
It's
single
1.3
line,
miles.
it's a single phase line. You can tell by just looking at the poles. But, and he said, he's probably right, it's probably close to $1 million to upgrade that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
No.
Can I make a suggestion before we adjourn?
Quit.
It's like
Bob's
building a
point,
road, it's $1 million a mile.
There's confusion on the board here as to who's in charge of what. So
Okay.
can we assign some tasks to people?
Go ahead.
So that, no, I'm just saying so that we can,
Go right ahead.
okay.
Since you got the minutes
No,
right in
I
front of
said,
you,
so I just want to make sure. So Doug is going to contact Eversource, New Hampshire Saves, take care of that piece.
he's
of it.
already did it.
Already
Yeah.
done, it's done.
Martha's going to contact her old company.
Yep,
I'm
and
gonna talk
Revision
to-
Energy.
Yeah, oh, revision, okay, right there.
That's two different things.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I'll take care of Dave. You're going to contact the schools. So do we have any tasks we can give Sue, Mike, or
No, I'm
Bob?
gonna come up with another,
Oh.
energy auditor, but I just can't
Okay.
remember the name.
Energy audit. Is there anything we would like Bob to work on?
How about grants? Has anyone, Doug started pursuing grants, but I thought I was initially on grants.
All right.
And that,
You can do grants.
You can do the grant, I've
Yeah,
got
do the
Eversource.
grants.
because there's a number of agencies, federal government that have, and independent agencies.
So
that have
you are
grants
now the
possibly.
official grant
Okay.
guy.
Okay.
We finally got to where I wanted to go.
Thank you.
Incidentally.
Well, we have this lovely lady here that needs.
Sue, is there anything you'd like to pursue?
Learning to abstain when I should. Like, I'm only kidding. I'd love to do something, I just have literally no idea. I'm just,
Well, we'll have something for you by the next meeting.
or yeah, or just even email me and say, hey, I thought of something,
I
you
don't
know.
want to get into the school, board's work, but it would be worth looking into the electric bus opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw today, probably the same thing that you saw, that there is a federal grant to
Yeah.
electrify buses.
There you go, Bob.
But there were grants for trucks as well, for like DPW truck, like heavy duty trucks, which I was shocked.
And police
that
cruisers.
They could do electric
Police
ones.
cruisers.
Is that a
That's a
federal
good
grant?
idea.
Mike?
Now, is electricity
Mike,
for
is that
a
federal
vehicle, the
grant?
larger vehicles, electricity's not, I'm just, I don't
I
care.
don't know
It's
the
not
ins and outs of
inexpensive,
it.
so is it really gonna be cost effective in the
We'll
long
find
run?
out next meeting.
You know, those
That's
are
the
big
cliffhanger.
vehicles, those are big vehicles, there's a lot of kids on those buses, and I'm like, wow, really?
That would be the cliffhanger.
Yeah, how often, are you gonna be stopping at every corner, juicing up before you, to take the stop
I don't
sign?
know, but
I
they-
don't know, they're just
They
big.
mentioned that there was like $1 billion.
Yeah. And I don't
this
think so. I think that
Volkswagen
they can go pretty far on a
You
charge.
got my email.
In the state?
Yeah. So, I mean, we should try to get a piece of it. If it benefits the town and we don't have to pay for it, that's wonderful. But that's our cliffhanger. We'll have to find out how all that works for our next meeting on May
I
19th.
just started, I just keep thinking of my electric bill, I get shocked when I get that, then I go to the gas station and I'm crossing my fingers, I'm like, wow,
Then you
how's
go
this all gonna
grocery
pan out?
shopping and you
Right,
stop.
oh, and don't even get me going.
All right, so, are we done?
No, one
that?
final thing. I have that table that you sent out, the person you talked to about the bulk purchases. How much did he say that we could
He
save?
said anywhere between, 25 to 50%.
25, 50?
On what? Electric power?
Oil and
Oh,
gas.
oil and power.
Yeah.
Doing a
Heating-
bulk
It's a lot.
purchase.
Heating
Liquid
oil.
fuels.
Seems
Heating
like a
oil
lot of
services,
savings.
Seems like a lot of savings to me,
$74,300.
too.
I could
So-
believe 5% or.
50% would be half of that, 30-something thousand.
Well,
a
that would
bad
pay
deal?
for the study we need.
Yeah.
Ask him to prove it to you.
Yeah.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn. I'll second then.
Second it, third it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mass is ended.